And in looking for those hidden layers, there are hidden layers in nature, as Dr. Bernstein and others would understand. This is one of the hidden layers we found when Josephine Butler, my late mentor, daughter of sharecroppers, granddaughter of enslaved people, gathered with me with homeless children, children from transitional housing who had never known real soil in their lives, to plant flowers. We were unprepared for the reaction when they dug into the dirt and suddenly saw for the first time in their lives these squiggly little creatures living in the dirt, and they wanted to take them home as pets. And Josephine said, "Oh no, they have work to do. They are enriching this soil so the soil can feed the trees and the trees can make the air for you to breathe." And the kids were like, "Oh." And they carefully put the earthworms aside as they planted the flowers and then restored them to their home. In that moment, there was a piece of the reverence, the magic of life, that too many of our children all over the world are never getting a chance to experience. This is why our kids are killing each other, because we have forgotten that. And so the end result of this is a park that's dramatically transformed. 99% crime reduction, because tens of thousands of people came back out and connected with the land. To go there on a Sunday today is a vision of people and the land in peace and harmony. Another example, in the far eastern side of town, another part of town that very few tourists have ever seen, there's a stream valley that had, on the other side of the Anacostia River, an ideal image for many years. This is back in the 1800s, but this was the reality that we discovered at the headwaters of that stream system. It's a place that had been named after a slaveholder, inexplicably in the longest African-American continuous community in the city, but we decided to rename it Marvin Gaye Park, because it's the place where that famous American singer actually sang his first songs of his own and was first inspired to develop songs like Mercy, Mercy Me, Ecology, as the only major Motown star ever to sing about the earth. It was a place that had been a place of peace and pride and play in this beautiful amusement park, every face in that photo African-American from 1927, and yet it had become one of the worst parks in town. This was what it looked like if you attended school next to the park. This was the attitude of the school and the city, really, toward the park. But there were other people who had a different attitude. There were elders who remembered, and there were kids who dreamed. They had never seen a real park in their lives, only on TV, but they still knew what nature was for, and every day they were there trying to make that connection. These were some of the kids that we said hello to, and we asked them, "What do you dream of? What would you like to see in your heart of hearts?" And they would say, "Well, I'd like to see some trash cans." And we said, "That's ridiculous, that's not a dream." And they said, "Oh yes it is, look around." And they were right. In that 1.6-mile corridor, there wasn't one municipal trash can. And then they had other simple ideas, like let's bring music back in and let's get the stink out of the creek. We found 100 million gallons of raw sewage had been flowing into the creek through unmonitored pipes. And so with their help, we put together a call to action, not just to demand action from the government, but to commit their support. The young people presented a petition of 2,500 people to the city council. And then a group of community leaders gathered in the barbershop along the way to launch the effort. This image of that stream valley was the first time in over a century that anyone had painted a positive image of what it was. When we presented this to the city council, they couldn't believe that they were looking at the place they'd represented for years, because they'd only looked at it in terms of liabilities. And it was really through the storytelling of the elders and the dreams of the kids that this new vision began to inspire. Soon there were planning efforts to think of new ways of making that park come alive, new kinds of visions. And these were all done with just colored pencil drawings that have now become the framework of the new park. A new amphitheater there at the bottom, which had been the most violent part of the entire park, a replaced methadone clinic, a new playground area right where the junkies used to shoot up, a green plaza at the hub of the park, and more. And up at the top, a green nursery, a native plant nursery, the first in the city that we're now building as a base of job training. These ex-offenders came out, and this is what they pulled out of the stream in one morning's work in that park. This was the beginning of another dream, that dream the kids had of music by the stream. We didn't have funds to build an amphitheater, so we looked for a natural place where the slope of the hill came together with the flat across the stream, and this became the Marvin Gaye Amphitheater out of the weeds. People thought we were crazy, but we had a trick up our sleeve. We knew, even though we didn't have any talent, that if you have an open mic and you have music, you have an instant talent show, and that was how we launched the Marvin Gaye Amphitheater with kids coming out. This neighborhood has the second highest percentage of children of any neighborhood in all of DC, and the kids are really the ones who've led the way. Here they are making mosaics of their heroes lining the center entrance to the park. And here, and perhaps the one thing I'm more proud of than any other thing I've helped spark in my professional life was a farm market that they created right where the heroin market had been. They went to the city government and they said, if they're allowed, I know you're not allowed to sell things, but they're selling heroin and PCP. Why can't we sell the tomatoes we're growing in the park? And if anyone ever wondered if kids have power, I challenge you to go in and see what these kind of kids have been able to do. The reactions, the looks on the dealers' faces when these kids were set up before they were that one Saturday morning, and they found this. There was nothing in their repertoire to deal with this. And in fact, that farm market began 8 years ago. It's now still running, and it has permanently displaced that heroin market. And so through all this, people are breathing new life into that park, the longest Stream Valley park in the city park system. In all kinds of programs, this park is now breathing life into its surrounding community. And in doing this, we're making the park a part of people's daily lives with integrated programs in the park and community. With health and safety programs, we have a whole program called Heart and Soul, which Dr. Marty Townsend here has been advising. We're now learning how to document the impacts of our work and be more than just anecdotal about it, but we're seeing a dramatic impact on both the physical and mental health of the area. Education, where you learn in the park. People were learning about African American history by looking at pictures on a wall rather than going out to the very places where Dr. King stood when he was organizing Freedom Summer, for example. And jobs. Green space, green infrastructure can be a tremendous gateway to the green economy as long as we don't build on that green space. Environmental sustainability of all kinds. Through all this, we've had massive impact, over 50,000 volunteers, over 200 partner organizations and agencies. We've removed 5 million pounds of trash. But in so doing, we've created a whole new platform for renewal of our city and, in a way, for a small model of renewal of our civilization. Our $5 million that we raised has leveraged well over $500 million for broad renewal of that entire Stream Valley system. And so through this, we've had real impact on advancing the physical and mental health of the community in all kinds of ways through fitness programs and nature walks and fresh food growing and nutrition classes and broader spiritual renewal and connection with friends and neighbors, through environmental health advancement and so many different ways of restoring biodiversity in our small way. To go into one part of the park that we now call the King Nature Sanctuary, where we replaced tens of thousands of invasives with the native plants that brought in the native songbirds, was truly a thing of magic to see. Economic health as well. I mean, there's so much more that we can do to use green space as an instrument of new jobs, investment, tourism, enterprise, green infrastructure, green energy, bringing people back into the city. Density is key to stopping sprawl, and density can happen with green space. And through all this, increased solvency, because in fact, green space is key to more cost-effective government programs. And finally, social health. You know, in all the talk about the climate crisis, we hear a lot about technology and we hear a lot about policy. but we don't hear much about community. Community is the key missing ingredient in that combined effort to combat the toughest problems that we face today, and green space is key to community. This is my view of parks. Parks is really the center, not an oasis that's removed from everything, but parks as the hub of helping us meet the toughest challenges that we have today in our cities. And I challenge you to find a single challenge that does not have a way that green space can help advance it.